It's a beautiful art form. I make my movies for cinemas, and I know it's like they come out in the other platforms, that's fine, but
The split between Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes wasn't just another Hollywood breakup. It was loud, tangled, and far messier than anyone on the outside ever realized. And standing right in the middle of all that chaos was their daughter, Suri. Back then, people looked at her and assumed she was too little to understand anything, too protected to notice the tension building between her parents. Turns out, everyone read that completely wrong. Because now, at 19, Suri Cruise is stepping forward with her own truth about what really went down between her mom and her father. And the way she lays it out, the story the world thought it knew, barely scratches the surface. Her version hits with a weight nobody expected, opening a window into a side of that divorce most people never even considered. So what exactly did Suri Cruise reveal about her parents' split? And why is she choosing this moment, after all these years, to speak? Let's break it all down, because the details shift the entire narrative. The TomKat story, the truth behind Tom, Katie, and the daughter who saw everything. It all started like a Hollywood fairy tale on fast forward. One moment, Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes were perfect strangers moving through their own worlds. The next, they were sprinting toward each other like something or someone had pressed skip on the entire dating phase. Their romance didn't just bloom quickly, it exploded. Spring 2005 looked harmless enough on the surface, but behind the glossy photo ops and blinding flashes from paparazzi cameras, something intense was brewing. It was the kind of love story that felt too big, too loud, and too perfectly timed to be real. And once you step back and look at how fast every piece clicked into place, the whole thing starts to feel like a puzzle someone tried to solve with missing pieces. That tension, that rush, that strange sense that something wasn't adding up. That was the beginning of TomKat. TomKat happened like a lightning strike. Spring 2005 wasn't even over before Cruise and Holmes were suddenly wrapped up in one of the most public romances Hollywood had ever seen. And what rattled everyone wasn't the relationship itself. It was the speed. Within weeks, they were engaged. Within months, they were expecting a baby. And in 2006, Suri Cruise arrived. The world watched the couple's every move, but the whispers hit just as fast. Cruise's increasingly erratic behavior was turning into headline material, and people couldn't ignore how often Scientology's name hovered in the background of their story. Rumors spread that the entire romance was orchestrated, a publicity boost conveniently lined up with the films both actors were promoting. What was supposed to be a love story came wrapped in suspicion, raised eyebrows, and conversations happening behind closed doors. At the time, Cruise was still treated like Hollywood's golden boy, but that shine didn't last. Over the years, exposés dragged Scientology deeper into controversy, and Cruise's public behavior made him look more unpredictable than untouchable. By the time the whirlwind ended in divorce, the story had become less about romance and more about the strange, layered, Scientology-soaked saga they had built together. Before any of that happened, Holmes was engaged to Chris Klein, a relationship that started when they were teenagers. While still engaged, she told 17 magazine that every little girl dreams about her wedding and that she used to imagine marrying Tom Cruise. 2 months later, she ended her engagement with Klein, describing the split as amicable. Not long after that interview, Cruise reached out. He contacted her team under the guise of mission. Impossible, possibly considering her for a role. When Holmes met him, she later shared that she felt instantly that they were meant to be together and meant to get married. What followed was a blur. After a 4-hour meeting, they slipped into a dating routine that didn't look anything like real life. A simple dinner wasn't dinner. It was a meal served inside Cruise's private jet. Their next outing was a motorcycle ride to the beach. Holmes described that ride as her first time on a motorcycle, saying she was in Los Angeles, heading toward the beach, and falling in love from the moment she shook his hand. Less than a month after meeting, they walked their first red carpet together, not just anywhere, but in Rome. They attended the David di Donatello Film Awards side by side, and the message was clear. They were official, and they wanted the world to know. Then came the moment that stamped their relationship into pop culture forever: the Oprah couch. Cruise appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and expressed his excitement about Holmes with explosive energy, the jumping, the kneeling, and the intensity that made Winfrey later tell the press she didn't know what to make of it. A People magazine poll showed that 63% of respondents believed the romance was a publicity stunt after watching that moment. Once Holmes began dating Cruise, her inner circle noticed changes. She suddenly fired her manager and publicist without explanation. She also started exploring Scientology and was assigned a Scientology assistant, Jessica Rodriguez, who followed her everywhere. Rodriguez was present during Holmes's interview with W magazine, coaching her through answers. Holmes described the religion as exciting, explaining that she had just started auditing and taking courses that she really enjoyed. But sources emphasized that Holmes never became a fully committed member of the church. 8 weeks after they met, Cruise proposed at the top of the Eiffel Tower. They dined at Le Jules Verne, and afterward, Cruise held a press conference to announce their engagement. At one point, he referenced his Oprah moment and announced that he would be jumping on couches for a very long time. People who attended noticed that the couple didn't touch once throughout the entire conference. Around that time, Holmes backed out of the film Factory Girl at the last minute. The movie centered on Edie Sedgwick, who struggled with mental health issues, and speculation grew that Holmes's decision was connected to Scientology's rejection of psychiatry. Cruise also expressed that he didn't want Holmes taking on victim roles and preferred she play stronger characters. 6 months into their relationship, they revealed that they were expecting a baby. Cruise had already adopted children with Nicole Kidman, but this child would be Holmes's first. Scientology encourages silent births, where the mother remains quiet and calm throughout labor. It's possible Holmes delivered Suri under these conditions. The couple waited 4 months before introducing Suri to the world. Their silence fueled bizarre rumors that Suri was ill, that she didn't exist, or that the pregnancy was fabricated for publicity surrounding War of the Worlds and Batman Begins. When they finally revealed her, they chose Vanity Fair for Suri's first public photos. A year later, they got married in Bracciano, Italy. The ceremony took place in Odescalchi Castle and reportedly cost $3 million. Giorgio Armani designed Holmes's 2 wedding dresses, one of which featured Swarovski crystals and took over 300 hours to create. Many of Holmes's friends were absent, but celebrities and Scientology officials filled the room. John Travolta, Jennifer Lopez, and Will and Jada Pinkett Smith were among the guests, while Holmes's former Dawson's Creek co-stars were nowhere in sight. In May 2010, Holmes and Cruise performed together at a charity event for the Motion Picture and Television Fund. Holmes delivered a sultry dance to Whatever Lola Wants, and Cruise performed his own routine. Over time, Holmes stopped speaking about Cruise with the same glowing enthusiasm she once had. Instead, she focused on her career and personal growth. She told Marie Claire that she felt ready for a new chapter, eager for roles she might have once feared, and for the chance to travel with her daughter. By June 2012, the cracks were showing. Cruise arrived at the Rock of Ages premiere alone. He briefly mentioned that Holmes was an amazing woman and, in another interview, described her as extraordinary, saying she had a beautiful creativity, that she was funny and charming, and that her presence lifted him. He described himself as a romantic who enjoyed creating romantic dinners, something she appreciated. But behind the public compliments, something darker was happening. Holmes reportedly feared that Scientology might send Suri to the Sea Org, a group within the church known for intense discipline and, in some cases, forced labor at sea. That possibility was enough for Holmes to make a move. She filed for divorce, and within 10 days, a settlement was reached. Holmes got custody of Suri. Part of the agreement reportedly ensured that Suri would not be involved in Scientology. And because Scientology requires members to sever ties with people who leave the church, Cruise has gone long stretches without seeing his daughter. For a romance that began with sky-high declarations and a motorcycle ride to the beach, it ended in silence, the kind that leaves more questions than answers. That silence, however, was not the end of Suri's story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Why Tom Cruise stopped seeing Suri. The untold story of Hollywood's most mysterious father-daughter split. Suri Cruise didn't just disappear from the Hollywood spotlight. She slipped out of it with the kind of quiet precision that makes you look back and wonder how everyone missed the signs. One moment, she was the little girl the paparazzi chased through airports, streets, and red carpets. The next, she was carving out a new life in New York with her mother, far from the world she was born into, far from the father whose shadow still hangs over her story. And that's the part people forget. While the headlines focused on Tom and Katie's breakup, a much deeper story was forming around the child caught in the middle. Now at 19, Suri is still one of the most famous celebrity teens alive, yet no one really knows her. And that mystery didn't happen by accident. When Holmes left Los Angeles in 2012 and moved to New York with her daughter, everything changed. Suri suddenly swapped Hollywood for Manhattan sidewalks and settled into the city like she had been waiting for it all along. She turned into a mini Sarah Jessica Parker, tiny, stylish, and effortlessly chic, with street looks that fashion blogs couldn't stop posting. Cruise was granted 10 days a month to see her, but that didn't matter much in the long run. The last time they were photographed together was in 2012 at Disneyland. After that, Tom and Suri slipped into a silence that still raises questions more than a decade later. And that's the strange part. Suri grew up in front of cameras, but the second her parents split, the curtain dropped. She went from constant exposure to total mystery, a shift so dramatic it almost felt intentional. Before the distance, Cruise had been obsessed, truly obsessed, with the idea of becoming a hands-on father. When Holmes became pregnant, his excitement hit such heights that he bought a personal ultrasound machine just so he could see the baby whenever he wanted. He confirmed that he purchased the device, which can cost up to $200,000, during a conversation with Barbara Walters. It was a move that made headlines immediately. The American Institute of Ultrasound in Medicine issued a statement criticizing the decision, arguing that using such equipment at home bordered on misuse. After Suri's birth, Cruise agreed to donate the machine to a hospital. Everything looked picture-perfect from the outside, at least until 2012. Then Holmes abruptly filed for divorce, secured custody of Suri, and gave Cruise visitation rights. 10 days a month. On paper, it looked like a father-daughter relationship should have continued. In reality, it didn't. It's widely believed the two are now estranged, and that Disneyland photo from 2012 remains their last public sighting together. One of the reasons behind Holmes's decision to leave was her fear of Scientology's influence on Suri. That wasn't speculation. Cruise acknowledged it during a lawsuit he filed against an American tabloid. Radar Online shared the exchange where he was asked whether Holmes left to protect Suri from his religion. At first, he reportedly called the question offensive, insisting there was no need to protect his daughter from his beliefs. But when pressed further, he admitted that Holmes had made that assertion. Meanwhile, Suri stayed close to her mother. Holmes has always been vocal about wanting her daughter to have a life filled with freedom and identity, a life that wasn't shaped by fame, pressure, or anyone else's expectations. In 2020, she shared with InStyle that her biggest goal was to nurture her daughter's individuality, making sure she grew up confident, strong, and fully herself. She described Suri as someone who came into the world with a powerful personality. Life in New York fits that perfectly. Suri is often seen running errands with Holmes or spending time with her school friends. Just regular moments, nothing staged, nothing Hollywood. She attends an elite private school in Manhattan, and her days blend into the rhythm of the city she now calls home. Holmes once told InStyle that they were followed constantly when Suri was younger. She shared that she would walk her daughter to different parks at dawn, around 6 in the morning, just to give her a chance to play without cameras tracking their every step. This quieter life didn't erase Suri's signature style. If anything, New York made it stronger. She's become a full-blown fashion muse for bloggers online. High-waisted pants, flowy tops, soft accessories. She mixes them with the kind of effortless confidence that feels inherited from her mother. At one point, she reportedly owned a wardrobe worth over $3 million, filled with pieces from Giorgio Armani, Donatella Versace, Roberto Cavalli, and Burberry. That was when she was just a child, and the fashion fascination never really stopped. Through all of it, one thing remains clear. Suri Cruise grew up in the fallout of one of Hollywood's loudest divorces, but somehow built a quiet, grounded life far away from the noise. And while the world still wonders why Tom Cruise hasn't been in the picture for so long, Suri seems focused on one thing: living a life that finally belongs to her. Before Katie Holmes, before the motorcycles, and before Suri became the center of a custody storm, there was Nicole Kidman. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, the truth behind Hollywood's most haunted love story. Their marriage wasn't just a headline, it was an empire. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman walked into the 1990s as two of the brightest stars alive. A power duo so blinding the world convinced itself they were untouchable. He had Jerry Maguire and Mission: Impossible. She had Batman Forever and Practical Magic. Together, they looked unstoppable, unbreakable, almost mythic. But beneath the glamour, the lawsuits, the red carpets, and the carefully managed smiles, something darker was tightening around them. And when the cracks finally split open after 11 years, the shockwaves didn't just hit Hollywood. They rewrote the entire narrative of who they were and what their marriage had really been. Their story began in 1990 on the set of Days of Thunder. The film didn't do much at the box office, but the chemistry between its leads was immediate and intense. Cruise once shared with Entertainment Weekly that his first reaction to meeting Kidman was pure physical attraction, describing it as lust that hit him instantly. Kidman, on her end, told Du Jour that she fell madly and passionately in love, admitting she was reeling over him and would have gone to the ends of the earth for him. That kind of whirlwind connection didn't stay casual for long. On Christmas Eve of that same year, after a brief but heated courtship, They married in Telluride, Colorado. And just like that, two rising stars turned into Hollywood's golden couple. But with fame came scrutiny. And with this couple, scrutiny came in waves. Throughout the 90s, Cruise and Kidman found themselves constantly defending the legitimacy of their marriage. Cruise told Entertainment Weekly in 1996 that every step Kidman took became bigger news because she was with him, explaining that people judged her because of it, and that it added pressure, a downside of being married to him that he acknowledged openly. The tabloid obsession got so relentless that the couple took outlets to court multiple times. They filed lawsuits, forced retractions, and walked away with apologies. Then, they donated the settlements to charity. In one 1998 case, after a British tabloid claimed their marriage was fake, Cruise announced through CBS News that taking legal action had become their final option against those printing vicious lies about him and his family, making it clear he intended to protect them. Despite the noise, they built a real home together. They adopted two children, Isabella and Connor. They worked on projects, weathered storms, and even reunited on screen for Eyes Wide Shut in 1999, a film that now feels almost prophetic when you look back at it. But by early 2001, everything unraveled. On February 5th, after 11 years of marriage, Cruise and Kidman announced their separation. Their statement pointed to the pressures of two full-time acting careers and the long stretches they spent apart while working. To the public, it felt abrupt. To Kidman, it was devastating. She later told people that she believed their life together had been perfect and described the divorce as a shock to her system. When Vanity Fair asked Cruise in 2002 why the marriage ended, he answered in a way that only deepened the mystery. He explained that both he and Kidman knew the reason, and that she was the mother of his children. He wished her well and reflected that sometimes in life you do everything possible. But eventually, you have to face brutal reality. After the split, both stars moved on, at least publicly. Cruise married Katie Holmes and later divorced her. Kidman married Keith Urban. Their lives forked into different worlds, different families, and different futures. Today, Cruise rarely talks about Kidman, although he did recently refer to her as a great actress. Kidman, meanwhile, made it clear to the New York Times that she has no interest in looking back or dissecting their marriage in public. And maybe that silence tells the real story. Two people who burned bright, burned fast, and left behind a love that Hollywood still can't stop trying to decode. But while Kidman chose quiet reflection, Cruise's story with his next chapter, his daughter Suri, was far from settled. His absence from her life became a question mark that wouldn't fade, a gap that the world noticed long before Suri herself was old enough to understand it. And now, at 19, the mystery surrounding that father-daughter relationship is finally being addressed, revealing truths that Hollywood glossed over for years. At 19, Tom Cruise's daughter finally reveals the truth behind the divorce. Cruise's absence from his daughter's high school graduation in 2024 didn't just raise eyebrows. It cracked open a conversation Hollywood has tried to tiptoe around for more than a decade, dragging back the one question Tom Cruise has spent years trying to outrun. Why did he step out of Suri's life? And what does that silence really mean now that she's old enough to speak for herself? Because watching her walk that stage with a new name, in a new chapter of her life, made something clear. Whatever happened between Tom and Katie Holmes didn't stay in 2012. It left a trail that stretched all the way to that graduation night, turning a family breakup into something deeper, louder, and far more personal than the public ever realized. Tom Cruise's long, undeniable estrangement from his daughter Suri came into sharper focus last year, 11 years after he launched a $50 million defamation lawsuit against a publication that reported he had abandoned his child because Katie Holmes refused to raise her within the Church of Scientology. During a September 2013 deposition for that case, Cruise objected strongly to reports from In Touch that claimed he cut ties with 7-year-old Suri after the 2012 divorce. He specifically pushed back against the idea that he, as Scientology's most visible celebrity member, had chosen the church over his daughter for good. He pointed to a headline that labeled Suri abandoned by daddy and described it as absolutely disgusting, doubling down on how offensive he found the implication. But, as Queen Elizabeth II once hinted when speaking about differing recollections, definitions of abandonment can shift depending on who is telling the story. And according to a new report from The Sun, insiders claim Cruise has not seen his daughter in 11 years. Those accusations resurfaced fast when Cruise was photographed at Taylor Swift's sold-out Eras Tour show at Wembley Stadium, smiling, exchanging friendship bracelets, chatting with Travis Kelce, and dancing in the VIP section. It would have been harmless fan behavior, except for one thing. The night before, his daughter graduated from Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts in New York City, and he wasn't there. His absence made headlines on its own. Then, more headlines rolled in when the 19-year-old dropped her father's surname for the ceremony, introducing herself instead as Suri Noel. Sources told Page 6 the name was a tribute to her mother, since Noel is Katie Holmes' middle name, and Holmes has essentially raised Suri alone in New York since the split. Whether Suri has legally changed her name remains unclear, but a source explained that she dropped Cruise because she wanted her own identity and a clean start as she heads to college. Still, her choice can easily be interpreted as something more: a quiet, pointed rebuke of the father she hasn't publicly seen in years, a sign that she has, in her own way, moved on. Scientology journalist Tony Ortega called Cruise out for abandonment again last year, after seeing the contrast between the Swift concert photos and Suri's graduation. In his Underground Bunker newsletter, he argued that Cruise's choices over the past 12 years show that the situation is even worse than most people realize. To understand how the gap between father and daughter became so wide, you have to go back. Cruise and Holmes began dating in 2005, welcomed Suri in spring 2006, and married later that year in a lavish ceremony at an Italian castle, attended by major Scientology figures including David Miscavige. Early on, Holmes fully embraced Scientology, which Ortega described as an organization known for exerting intense, cult-like control over members. But her interest began to fade over the next 6 years. While caring for Suri, she also spent time with Cruise's older children, Isabella and Connor, whose mother is Nicole Kidman. Kidman had once been deeply involved in Scientology as well, but her enthusiasm faded before her 2001 split from Cruise. According to a 2012 Vanity Fair investigation, Isabella and Connor lived with Cruise after the divorce, were homeschooled, and were taught that Kidman was a suppressive person, someone viewed by Scientology as hostile. Ortega reported that Holmes would have known that deeper Scientology indoctrination begins around a child's 6th birthday. And it's no coincidence, The Sun noted, that Holmes chose to leave in 2012, the year Suri turned 6. Cruise later admitted he didn't expect Holmes to file for divorce. Yet the process moved quickly, ending with a settlement in just 11 days. According to The Sun, Holmes received sole custody of Suri. Under the agreement, Cruise was required to pay $400,000 per year for her upbringing, and there has been no reporting that he failed to meet that obligation. Still, Holmes's decision to leave the marriage, seek primary custody, and enroll Suri in private school caused what both Ortega and Vanity Fair described as a massive PR disaster for Cruise and Scientology. Under normal church rules, her actions would be automatic grounds for disconnection, meaning she would be cut off entirely. But Cruise was granted a rare exception because of his celebrity status. According to Ortega and Vanity Fair, he was allowed to maintain ties with Suri if he chose to. How much he actually maintained became the central argument in his lawsuit against In Touch and Bauer Publishing. Cruise insisted during his deposition that he never removed Suri from his life emotionally, physically, financially, or otherwise. He argued that limited time with her was due to film schedules and Holmes's calendar. His love for her, he claimed, and his sense of responsibility had not waned in any way. But the deposition also revealed that between June 18th and Thanksgiving of 2012, he saw his daughter for just 10 days. He was also questioned about taking a quick 24-hour trip during filming to attend a Scientology event in the UK, while not finding time to visit Suri, just a few states away in New York. He was further pressed to acknowledge that one of Holmes's reasons for divorcing him was to protect their daughter from Scientology. Several weeks after the deposition became public, Cruise settled the lawsuit. Bauer Publishing released a joint statement with his attorneys expressing that the publisher never intended to suggest Cruise had completely severed ties with Suri and regretted any such impression. Since then, multiple reports have claimed that Cruise does not see his daughter. According to The Sun, visits stopped around 2013. In his newsletter, Ortega criticized Cruise's alleged decision to cut Suri out, even though he enjoyed special status within Scientology. As Ortega explained, ordinary members are required to disconnect from anyone deemed a non-believer, including family. But Cruise, as Scientology's most important celebrity, had the power to ignore those rules and maintain relationships with both Holmes and Suri if he wanted to. Ortega argued that that's not what happened, saying that over the years, it became increasingly clear that Cruise had completely cut both Holmes and Suri out of his life. In his view, Cruise chose Scientology over his daughter because he believes L. Ron Hubbard was the greatest human being who ever lived, and that Hubbard's teachings are the only path to saving the planet. Maintaining his status within the church, Ortega argued, mattered more. Ortega also offered a harsher personal view of Cruise, describing him in blunt terms and insisting that the media is always too afraid to call him out. And now, with Suri stepping into adulthood under a new name, the story feels like it has shifted again. Not because she spoke publicly, but because her actions filled in the silence. Her life moved on without him, and his distance, once defended, now speaks louder than any denial ever did. Do you think Suri and her father will ever mend fences, or do you think otherwise? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.